When you hear Galapagos, you probably picture pristine waters, hammerheads, and amazing diving. But Galapagos also throws curveballs at you, and it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I'm Don, and I'm here to show you what these islands really demand. The gear that actually matters, and the skills that keep you calm when the ocean tests you. If you're curious about the demanding condition, interested in going, or exploring, pushing your skills while seeing amazing things while diving, this video is for you. Let's dive on in. Galapagos diving can feel less like a vacation and more like a field test of your training. One thing that caught me off guard diving Galapagos was the surge. Everyone always talks about the strong currents, but let me tell you, that generally pales in comparison to the strong surge that you will feel. This surge doesn't just push you forward off position if you let them. It can lift you a few feet, drop you, and then slide you crosswise in the same minute. It has a somewhat predictable pattern in that it sways back and forth. But that sway can get very strong very fast and catch you off guard. And if you're not ready for it, it can crash you right into some barnacles and rocks. Those barnacles are sharp. If your buoyancy control and body position aren't automatic, the water exposes that immediately. Think of it as a moving obstacle course where efficiency saves your dive and your gas. In general, while diving Galapagos, I preferred to be neutrally buoyant in all cases. I heard some advice from others that you want to be negatively buoyant, but being neutral, I was able to control myself much easier in the surge. Being streamlined and trim allowed me to grab rocks with my arms and pull myself with a quick and timed rip to the surge. I can also push myself away if needed. While if I was negative, I'd be literally hugging that rock right on top of it, probably being moved off of it or being blown off of it or off to my side and in a position of imbalance. Worst case, when I was neutral, if I get blown off my rock, I just float on to the next rock and I can grab that. I like to think of the experience somewhat like leapfrog, where you look where you're going to go and wait for the timing of the sway of the surge and then pull yourself and leap to the next rock. I tried to capture some good footage of this because before I went to Galapagos, I had no idea what to expect, and so I'm hoping this kind of gets the whole experience for you so you kind of get an idea of what some of it's going to be like. You do this because the surge is strong, but also because it is efficient. Being close to the rocks not only allows you to save your gas for longer dives, but also allows you to keep a low profile for the wildlife to come closer to you. If you're floating and swaying back and forth and being kind of odd thing that things don't recognize and probably uncontrollable and flailing your arms everywhere, everything's just going to go away from you. So the goal is to keep calm, conserve your gas, and have a low profile. But one thing you have to watch out for is there is reef there and also scorpion fish. So it's always important to look before you leave. In one case, one of my dive buddies was there and I saw a scorpion fish positioned right next to their leg where they couldn't see it. Just an accident waiting to happen. Fortunately, I caught it. I notified her. We moved. No worries. And one unique detail of our trip is we went during a new moon, which means strong current. And our current apparently was unusually strong. But what we found out later is new and full moons are not absolutely great to align your trip. Whenever I went on diving trips prior, I was thinking full moon must mean good current, and good current means you see a lot of stuff. But in this case, it means a deep upwelling of nutrients to the surface. Galapagos has a unique environment, and that unique environment is made partially because of this upwelling. So during the new and full moon phases, you could receive a massive upwelling, and that means very low visibility conditions with strong currents. So, lesson learned, not the most ideal conditions. Your experience may vary, but I'm glad we received truly formidable currents, as I can rightfully come on this video and attest that, yeah, it can be quite strong. Some may go there with less, but it's important to prepare for the worst. Cold is also a trial, and it sneaks up on you midway through the trip. We heard some general advice to not bring our dry suit for the trip, and honestly, that was a mistake. We went in the coldest month in hopes to see some great things, and that's when you can see some really cool things like hammerheads, whale sharks, potentially humpbacks, and other things. And the water is the coldest to dive from 14 Celsius or 57 Fahrenheit. And I will say that the temperatures we got were seemingly unusually cold. So they might be a little bit warmer, but maybe the trend of things, maybe things are getting cold in Galapagos, who knows? But expect it to be at least 14 Celsius or 57 Fahrenheit. Prepare for the worst. Maybe by the time you go, it might be colder. I had a 7mm wetsuit and a thermal heating vest, but I don't think that was enough. I was experiencing moderate hypothermia by the end of my dives, and that was unpleasant. For Galapagos, I'm there once in a lifetime, I'm gonna push through. But I wish I didn't have to. Thermoclines can turn a comfortable descent into a bone-chilling dive within minutes. Plus, when you're cold, your focus narrows and your air use climbs. So, exposure protection is not optional here, but the amount might be a personal choice. Definitely nothing less than a 7mm in the cold months. You might be able to do a 5mm in the warmer months. In fact, if you have a dry suit or are thinking about it, I would highly recommend bringing it. It's perfect for the environment. I would just avoid using it at the Wolf and Darwin dive sites because you don't want to ding your expensive dry suit on a barnacle there. And that's where the surge is going to be the most unpredictable on the trip. Outside of Darwin and Wolf, use your dry suit. Use only your dry suit and you will feel so much better. There's still amazing things to see outside Wolf and Darwin, and you can see it much more comfortably. So rent a 7mm for just Wolf and Darwin to protect your dry suit and use dry suit everywhere else. A 5mm hood and at least 5mm booties and a sturdy 5mm wet glove to protect you from the cold, barnacles, and from basalt rock. Also, to cover the bases, I'd highly recommend at least a 5mm hood minimum, at least a 5mm booty, and 5mm wet gloves. Wet gloves and not dry because you also want to protect your hands from the barnacles, not just the cold. And that basalt rock can also be sharp too. Sometimes you'll be latching on for dear life. Seasonality and move phases drive what you see and how it feels. Roughly, December through May brings generally warmer and calmer conditions with simpler entries and exits. June through November brings cooler upwellings, more nutrients, more plankton, and often better chances of big pelagics at the northern islands, Wolf and Darwin, with the trade-off of reduced visibility and colder waters. A lot of divers often debate the best months to go, and I've heard strong opinions on June, with July and August being big contenders. For reference, we went and experienced Galapagos in August. But ultimately, the visibility, currents, and animals are wild, so you might need some luck to go with you. Also, keep your eye out for El Nino years, as that tends to significantly diminish the wildlife as well. Conditions change fast, and two dives at the same dive site can feel like two different oceans in terms of current, visibility, and wildlife. If you only lock in some preparation habits, make it this: practice negative entries, controlled descents, DSMB deployment, comfort in current and surge until you feel confident with your buoyancy and skills throughout. So let's talk about negative entry. Pretty much almost all dives are going to be negative entries because negative entries are a good way to prevent the dive team from separating at the surface. You'll basically start your dive on the rib, roll back, and immediately dive down to about 3 or 6 meters, and where everyone will collect, and then you'll start your dive from there. You'll do your OKs and just continue to dive. So let's talk about negative entries for a second. You want to prevent your BCD before entry. Get the gas out any way you can. Exhale deeply. And then when you start your dive, by back rolling, you keep your head down. And then you'll do some strong kicks to start getting down. And while you're doing it, immediately, as soon as you hit the water, reach back, grab your lower dump valve on your BCD and let any remaining gas out. You should be able to drop gently down to 3 or 6 meters, or that's 10 or 20 feet, where the rest of your dive team will collect. Keep eyes on everyone to make sure that no one gets separated during this time. And as I mentioned, you want to make sure you have good drift discipline. You can drift, keep eyes on everyone, situational awareness, and be able to control and hover while drifting and keeping at least eyes on your buddy, if not your entire dive team, during this whole process. There might be a lot of cool stuff going on around you. You might be videoing it too, but as long as you have your buddy in sight, and ideally the whole dive team, you'll be okay. But in situation where you do get separated, the most important thing for you is to have a DSMB and deploy that DSMB as soon as you figure out you're separated. Remember to look around for up to 1 minute. If you can't see anyone in that time, let's say you got blown away from the surge or current, then deploy your DSMB. It notifies the boat, which should be on the surface, that you're there, and you should see the rib come to your DSMB. You don't just pop to the top, you take your time, you do your safety stop, and you come up slowly. The boat will be waiting there for you by your DSMB. The thing you don't want to do is take your time coming up and then be way off the dive site and the boat can no longer see you because they're probably following bubbles and they might not see your bubbles. So DSMB all the way, baby. This happened to someone in my group and I was very happy that they were able to deploy the DSMB. And it's hard to say if that saved your life, but it definitely made a stressful situation a lot more controllable. Also, it's important to keep your dive kit simple and streamlined. You don't want anything snagging on the rocks or banging against them as that surge is moving you through. The goal is to keep everything in place, nothing dangly, and keep it uncluttered. The payoff awaits in hordes of fish, pelagics, and unique endemic life of the Galapagos. Proper preparation not only keeps you diving every dive offered, but also cool and comfortable with the condition. Lack of preparation may leave you a bit rattled and hesitant to enter the water again. And I don't want that to be you. It's an expensive trip. I want you to enjoy it. So go prepared. And most importantly, be safe on that trip. Galapagos is in fact not a cheap destination to visit. And let's talk about that for a moment. Galapagos is such a unique place that you don't hear a lot about its origin. Or maybe to some degree, at least you're at least familiar with the theory of evolution. In essence, Galapagos is one of the harshest and most hazardous places to live in the world, perhaps outside of the pole. Further, it does not have enough water to sustain most life. But, as we all know, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution took place researching the unusual animals of the wildlife of Galapagos. This is because animals in the Galapagos are not uncommon to other parts of the world. They all wound up in Galapagos one way or another and evolved unique adaptations to the environment to survive the harsh conditions. They branched from their ancestors and created evolutions and strengths to survive and thrive in the desert oasis in the middle of the ocean. And here, they lie mostly untouched from normal human interference. But we too have faced hardships in trying to colonize these islands and failed repeatedly. Today, Galapagos self-sustains off tourism as a primary sustenance and is trying to ensure the fragile ecosystem and environment remains protected for years to come. So, with that said, they tried to limit tourists coming to the islands and making it more premium and protected, which does put a hefty price tag on those costs. Liveaboard range from $8,000 to $10,000 per person now. It's not cheap. But should you be intrigued to see one of the most interesting parts of this world in terms of evolved animal adaptations, remote islands, challenging conditions, and more, you will be rewarded with an unforgettable experience. And if you're enjoying this video, now is a great time to like and to subscribe. I post weekly content to help divers grow their skill, build confidence, and explore the ocean with curiosity and care. And by the way, if you're interested in keeping up with the latest and greatest, I have a free newsletter, and you can find a link in the description below, and I send out all the latest and greatest news that I can find every month. Let's talk more about the Liveaboard journey next. It's really the premium way to see Galapagos. You haven't properly dived Galapagos if you haven't done the Liveaboard. It is the only way to get to the more premium dive sites like Wolf, Darwin, and Isabela Island. They're remote and they require a liveaboard to get there. We did some land-based diving off San Cristobal at the famous dive site Kicker Rock, which had glowing reviews, and it was good. We saw a mola mola there, and I highly recommend, if you have time, check out Kicker Rock. You will enjoy it. Maybe you might see a mola mola, maybe not. It was certainly a surprise. We had terrible visibility, and I was sitting there in a cloud, maybe about 2 meters or 6 feet of visibility, and I can hear stuff happening around me. There is obviously hunting going on, but out of this murk just pops out this big old shape. At first, I thought it was like some kind of turtle. Nonetheless, I got out my camera and I started filming, and it was a mola mola. I feel he kind of was surprised to see me as much as I was surprised to see him. And we kind of shared a moment for like at least 30 seconds before other divers started catching on, seeing the mola mola. And obviously when he sees a whole bunch of other divers coming, he kind of got out of there. But it's still pretty cool to experience a mola mola so close. Again, it's wildlife. Your mileage will vary, but Kicker Rock was quite good. It pales in comparison to Darwin, Wolf, and Isabela. Not to knock it, it's very enjoyable. Just hard to compete with what you'll see on the liveaboard. You'll board the liveaboards at San Cristobal or Santa Cruz, and they will generally drop you off at the same or an alternate island, but one of those two. The airport is in San Cristobal though, so that one tends to be the general pickup and drop off. We were on board the Galapagos Sky, which was truly a marvelous boat with some of the best food I've experienced on a liveaboard. Fantastic crew, well-maintained boat, and everyone had a fantastic attitude. I do recommend it. Most liveaboards range from 7 to 10 days, and to my understanding, longer trips are no longer allowed than 10 days. We went aboard the 10-day trip, which had 3 more days at Wolf and Darwin, which I highly recommend as those are truly the most premium dive sites. And honestly, for 3 more days at Darwin and Wolf, it was worth the extra cost, which I believe was maybe $2,000 more than a 7-day. Once you board a liveaboard, from the port, you'll generally make your way over to Wolf, stopping along the way for a check dive on the first day to ensure your gear is ready and working along the way at an island in between. And generally those dive sites aren't the most noteworthy, but they are good for check dives. These are the stops where you want to lock in and prepare your gear, and waiting issues, as Wolf and Darwin are going to be far less forgiving. The water temperatures are cooler, but tolerable, around 16 Celsius to 22 Celsius, or 60 Fahrenheit to 71 Fahrenheit in the coldest months when we went, or 21 Celsius to 27 Celsius, or 70 to 80 Fahrenheit in the warmer months. This is what I'll consider the standard Galapagos temperatures outside certain areas. But do note, from my own experience and potentially where things are going, maybe the water is getting a little bit cooler, so it's hard to say. But these ranges are the traditional ranges that people expect, including us, so maybe we were an abnormality. It's important to also note, because of the currents in Galapagos, the temperature ranges can vary widely with thermoclines in them. By the time you reach Wolf, the warm-up is over. The water temperature is at the warmest of the trip, and Wolf and Darwin are around 22 to 26 Celsius or 72 to 79 Fahrenheit in the coldest months, and 23 to 29 Celsius or 73 to 84 Fahrenheit in the warmer months. I felt Darwin and Wolf were the most tolerable temperatures of the trip and completely doable in a 7mm wetsuit. It's also the most dangerous area to operate a dry suit because of the hazards we'll get to shortly. On our first day, we were greeted by orcas, which were throwing a turtle around like a frisbee, and having a great time, including swimming directly under us at the bow. And I got some good shots of it, I'll show. It was a grand experience and really felt like they rolled out a red carpet greeting us to the legendary Wolf Island. Later, we were informed that seeing the orcas is both a blessing and a curse, as they are the apex hunter of the region and chase off all of the wildlife. Everything hides. And thus, when you spot these beautiful and amazing orcas, you can sadly throw your expectations for thousands of hammerheads right out the window. But we do not control nature. Your time at Darwin and Wolf are limited, so make the best of every moment you have there. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the current and surge is real here. Most divers end up embracing on bare rocks with barnacles on them to stay put and watch the show. Use your hands and gloves deliberately and lightly, and only on lifeless substrate. Remember, there are scorpion fish there, so you have to be controlled and deliberate with your movement. Not to mention, I was very surprised to see coral there as well. I never expected to see coral in such cold waters, and everyone told me that it's always just bare rocks, but there is coral there, and you want to make sure to not go and smash right into the coral. You will see on my footage how I hopped between rocks while timing the surge to push me in a direction. Because I was neutrally buoyant and I was not hitting the rocks, I was not finning. I was basically just hovering there, remaining calm and mostly relaxed, pointing the camera to where I was gonna go next, and then timing the surge and leaping forward. Basically, the most of my movement was with my arms, pulling on the rocks. It's important to remain situationally aware too. Always keeping an eye on your party and members, just in case they need help or where they are going. Remember, I saw one of my buddies almost hit a scorpionfish, and I saved the day there. Likewise, there's another situation. Two of the members of our party almost got separated, were going the wrong way, and I was able to get their attention and say, we're this way. That could have been a party separation. It's always important to be situationally aware as a member of your team and keeping an eye on everyone. As divers in this far remote island, we want to take only photos and videos and leave nothing else. Not damage, nothing. We are passive observers and want to keep Galapagos pristine for generations to come. And I mentioned it earlier, but generally the dive plan for almost every dive is going to be that you start your dive with a negative entry down, meet with your group, and generally walk along the rocks to the place where you're gonna see action, and then hold that spot for, I don't know, maybe 10-15 minutes for some period of time, and then your team will signal to let go of the rocks, and then you'll drift for some period of time to see what happens after that. Sometimes, if there's a lot of action, you might go and cling to rocks again. I should also mention that reef hooks, if you have them, can be quite handy, but finding an area to hook onto might be tricky, as the rock boulders are very large, round, and there's not too many cracks to put them in. So they're not great rocks by nature for reef hooks, although I did see some people using them. One thing I would advise against reef hooks, because it is a lot of surge too. It's not just current pushing in one direction, it's a lot of back and forth. That could be kind of sickening on a reef hook, so I didn't have a reef hook, and I'm not entirely sure I'd recommend them, but you could bring one and see if you like it, but it's certainly not necessary. Some of our group use reef hooks with a short leash, which freed their hands while staying stationary. I instead just used one hand to grab the rock and basically used my other hand for a camera. But if you're someone who has a big giant camera that takes two hands, you might need a reef hook, which might be good for you on a short leash. It's kind of fun holding onto a rock with one hand, as you can kind of feel like a flag. You're a flag simulator, as the constant shifting surge will rapidly whip you in one direction or another, and sometimes violently and without warning. But being neutral and holding onto one point was the best way I found to mitigate it. So always look for those handholds, make sure there's no reef or scorpionfish, plan your move, wait for the surge, use your hands to create movement, and go for the grab. I also want to mention, during this time that you're basically stationary and holding onto a rock, you probably will feel colder than you expect as well. But once you're in position, now you just enjoy the show. If you're staying still, calm, and stationary, the wildlife will come close to you. You don't chase, ever. And then you can behold hammerhead galore. oceanic mantas, giant eagle rays, some of the biggest I've seen, Galapagos sharks, giant cartoonishly large tuna, schools of jacks, barracudas, and turtle. They will practically parade in front of you, back and forth, as they are just as curious as you are in them. If you watch carefully, above and below you, you can catch giant schools of hammerheads sifting through the blue or in the shallows, which makes for a beautiful video. Maintaining situational awareness to your group and the wildlife is key to not only capture the amazing things of Galapagos has to offer, but also in case a team member gets blown away from their positioning. I also want to mention that during your surface time, make sure you make your way to the top of your ship, which is generally invaded by hundreds of boobies, which I got way too comfortable saying while in Galapagos, which is perfectly normal, but then you have to be careful saying this word once you leave Galapagos. But regardless, there's lots of boobies, and to be clear, we're talking about birds here. Hundreds of them on the top of the deck. And generally you can see Nazca and red-footed boobies, and if you're lucky, maybe blue-footed boobies as well. And they're quite entertaining, let me tell you. They're very clumsy and comical birds. I feel like during my surface time, I could just go hang out on the top, but you have to be careful where you're standing in relation to where they're maybe dropping stuff. But regardless, position yourself well, and they're quite entertaining to watch. Endless entertainment during your surface time. All right, after that thrilling opener at Wolf, you will eventually make your way up to Darwin, which sadly no longer has this spectacular arch, the Darwin Arch. It is now the Darwin Pillar. Not officially renamed, but let's go with that. Perhaps as a sign of some kind, in 2020, a year we'll always remember, the Darwin Arch became the Darwin Pillars, just naturally. It was just very sudden, and it happened from what I heard. And so now they're the pillars. Sudden and natural erosion. But let's talk about Darwin. Darwin has similar protocols, but only one dive site. Wolf had several, but Darwin has one. And I'll put you right at Darwin's pillars, dropping at the head of the current, which can be quite a rush. You will not be drifting here, but instead leapfrog to rock to pull yourself to this ledge that's in front of the arch. And that just so happens to be where the whale sharks come to be cleaned. So if you're lucky, you'll see a whale shark hovering there, waiting for you, being cleaned by all sorts of giant pelagics, and you'll get quite a show to watch. But remember, it is wild life. This is often the peak highlight for mini trips. During the time at the arch, you can expect some intense and random cross surges that will shove you in every direction and potentially rip you straight off those rocks into some barnacles if you do not remain in control. This is generally why I do not recommend dry suits at Wolf or Darwin. It's rough there, and generally, while the water is warmer, I'd hate to be caught off guard and you to ruin your expensive dry suit and not have anything else to enjoy the rest of the dives with. A wetsuit is much more forgiving. I don't want anyone to hit those barnacles or a reef, but you do have more at risk with an expensive dry suit, and those barnacles are sharp. Save the dry suit for all the other dive sites. Unfortunately, on our trip, we saw 0 whale sharks, so we lucked out. That could happen to you, so just be prepared for that. You know, it is wild. But anyways, you'll spend some time hunkered on those rocks waiting for a potential whale shark or just generally large pelagics to show up. But after some time, you'll eventually move away around the arch and into the ripping current, where then the rest of the dive becomes a drift dive. And during this time, you'll be pushed around the arch and it'll be some time where you can't see the bottom. But over time, the blue will eventually become a sandbar, which is really cool because you want to keep your eyes looking down for swarms of hammerheads skittering along the bottom, and make sure you have your camera at hand because those are beautiful shots. The bottom is going to start very deep, but eventually get more shallow and shallow until you can drop down and then hunker on a small little rock or on the sand and enjoy the show longer at a more shallow area. And generally you can stay there for the rest of your NDL until, you know, the NDL is low or the dive time is low, and then you'll let go. Which I should mention that most dives there are going to run about 45 to 50 minutes per the park rules. So it doesn't matter if your gas consumption is better than that, everyone's going to end around 45 to 50 minutes. Just make sure you're not under that, because you don't want to come up early. During this time in the sandy area, it's very critical to be situation aware of where everyone is, because you're going to be drifting and potentially dropping and then potentially letting go. If you fail to keep an eye on everybody, you could be left behind. That's exactly where the party separation happened on my trip. Thankfully, everything was fine, but that's where it could happen. And I just want to give that example, and for you to always be watching out for your teammates during this time. Someone can disappear in a blink of an eye if you're not paying attention. If you don't all drop together and grab a rock, they're going to be gone. And again, that's why every diver really should feel comfortable deploying DSMB immediately and ascending safely with the needed stops and ending their dive with hopefully the dinghy already finding the DSMB before they surface. And next, let's talk about that dinghy experience. Often getting into dinghy is a bit of a shit show. With some intense currents and heavy swells, you'll be bumbling to get that gear off and get into the boat. Optimizing your gear like shoulder buckles and easy access gear removal is important. I brought my regulator in a long hose configuration setup, which I feel in reflection wasn't ideal for the situation at hand. It took a bit longer to stow, and the long hose needs more care to ensure the second stages stay safe. Long story short, a rough bump with someone's gear while stowing my gear occurred and their cylinder dropped, ripping my second stage right off of my low pressure hose. Clean off the hose, with the low pressure hose still pressurized and whipping all around super aggressively. Fortunately, everything was fine. I grabbed the low pressure hose, I depressurized it, everything was fine, but my second stage was completely gone, which was a very expensive bummer. But everyone was safe, that's the most important. So in reflection, maybe a standard regulator configuration is a little bit more optimal for these rough seas than the long hose configuration, given there is no overhead environment there. Lessons learned, sometimes a bit expensive one. After Wolf and Darwin wows and amazes you, the wowing is not done yet, as Galapagos has one final treat in store for you. Cold water. No, wait, no, not that. Endemic Galapagos animal in cold water. Further south, Cape Douglas at Fernandina flips the script again with colder water, heavy surge, and volcanic black rock. Time to bring that dry suit out and hope your preparation was sufficient enough. Remember, my 7mm and heater was barely enough. It was 14 Celsius or 57 Fahrenheit when we were there. The typical ranges are supposed to be 60 to 78 Fahrenheit or 16 to 26 Celsius. Regardless of the cold, these are not dives you want to miss. In these parts, many whales and whale sharks come to feed on the plankton, eating immense algae in the water. You may rarely catch a glimpse of them while diving, but they are often visible at least from the surface feeding. Also, it's a popular area to see mola mola, as they like both cold waters and ripping currents. And they have mola mola cleaning stations there. The island of Fernandina will blow your mind, as you'll get to see marine iguanas and how they adapted to live in this harsh environment by free diving to eat underwater algae. Plus, you'll see mola molas, batfish, penguin, diving birds, and the flightless coronon, which I'm probably butchering the name, plus more. I know I mentioned all these things, but I got some great footage, and I'm hoping, as we're whizzing through these things, to show you some glimpses of that footage of what all these things are as well. And eventually, you'll move to Isabela, where the cliffs above the water echo the ruggedness below. You'll have more opportunities to see mola mola, and the water will be slightly warmer, but not by much. The dives from Isabela get much less exciting. They're still good, and I didn't want to miss a thing. But I will say the premium diving experience is almost over. It is not the adrenaline spike of Darwin, but every dive site offers a chance to see something amazing. And the only way to see it is to dive. Eventually, you loop back toward the central and southern islands of San Cristobal. By then, you'll have managed warm currents, cold upwellings, odd visibility, and mental game of waiting for rare animals to appear. The lesson is simple and durable. You do not control the ocean here, but you can control your preparation, your trim, and your decisions beforehand. But there is a high chance of amazing rewards in the pristine waters that might blow you away. And I do want to mention briefly, because I wasn't sure of what I would expect, but most liveaboards will also have several land tours to see the giant tortoises, to see the blue-footed boobies and the frigate birds, including the sea lion colonies and such. There's a lot to see on those islands, and they'll be very educational during your land tours on those islands. So I do recommend you do all those. They're not extra, they're included in the liveaboard, at least as far as I know. Every liveaboard includes them. But if you have them, don't miss them. They're quite enjoyable as well. I did hear from some others that did both land-based liveaboards versus the scuba liveaboards, and they still enjoyed land-based ones as well. So if you want to do both, you could still do that, but I will say from their discussion, I think they still enjoyed the scuba diving experience plus a little bit of land more. So if you could only pick one, I would just do scuba plus the land excursions that you do. You don't need to pay extra to do the land one. If you have the option to do both, good, that's great. But if you can only do one, I would highly recommend the scuba one, as you'll have some land included with the liveaboard. So Galapagos will test your preparation, your trim, and your decision. And that is exactly why it's worth it. You do not drift into hammerheads here. You earn a chance to spend time with them. Tell me in the comments below, what do you think of Galapagos? Are you going there? Have you been there? Let me know what you're anticipating or how you enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to make sure your packing is optimized with this video here, and that you're ready for the liveaboard with this video here. The more you know, the more you'll love and protect the ocean. Until next time.